Delighted to welcome you to the launch of Prudential's 7th biennial study on the financial experience and behaviors among women.
One of the big questions that people have, and I'll start this with you, Joan, is not only what's different, but maybe you can highlight for us some of the key findings and maybe some of the takeaway points that you think are most central to this year's study.
Thanks, Lynette. I'd be happy to do that for all of you. And I think you'll find I'll give an overview and then we'll go a little bit deeper on each of the topics. But there were really 4 key findings from this year's study. The primary one is just that. Like it or not, women have become the primary breadwinners. And we'll dig into what like it or not means a little bit. Confidence gap. That's a trend that we've been looking at since 2000 in the study. And you know what? It's widening, it's deepening, so it's not getting better. The third piece is that we're really excited this time, as Bob mentioned to you, we've actually done not only gender differences in the study where we've got the male perspective, but we've also dug down a little bit deeper into some of the multicultural markets. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about women's relationships with advisors.
This survey looked at women who are the primary breadwinners, 53%. Let's talk about a little bit about why that is and what implications that could have for women in terms of their financial decision making. Are women still lacking in confidence even though they might be making more money?
2 years ago that 95% of women are involved in financial decision making. What we have found this time, and now it's a broader group, so it's not just the 50,000 household and above, but what we found this time is really it's 91%.
What we continue to see with the Prudential study about women is this confidence gap, and that the real opportunity there is for more education around investments. I think women need to see themselves more when they're looking at, when they're reading stories, if you will. And I think we all want to see ourselves, if you will, accomplishing these goals.
I think, too, one of the interesting points, though, with that confidence gap, that about a third of the women, 38% or so, feel very optimistic about the economy over the next year. But you know what? When we look back at the study we did 2 years ago, 55% of women felt very confident. So while we think that there maybe is a little bit broader confidence, it's waning a little bit.
For men, the thing that they worried about most was the overall economy.
Right.
For women, it was worrying about paying the household bills, and then debt, I believe, was next.
You know, one of the points that I noticed is that all women really state that an important goal that they have is to avoid becoming a financial burden to their loved ones, as well as having enough money to maintain their lifestyle in retirement. But what we found, though, that the Asian Americans, the African Americans, and Hispanic women placed a much greater emphasis on really maintaining a specific standard of living for their families if they, passed away. And so what it really shows you is that the multicultural markets really were focused, I think, more on replacing their income.
One of the things we know with African American women in particular are they're the caretakers. They come out of the workforce to care for family. And so having that kind of experience, if you will, really sensitizes you to, oh, I don't want to be a burden on my family. I know I'm being the caretaker, but I don't want to have to be put in that position. So I think, to your point, that is some cultural significance to that, absolutely.
You know, I want to go back to one of the things that Deborah said at the beginning, where she really talked about how the woman, we focus on the immediate needs. So we focus on the income replacement, taking care of the family, taking care of the children. And I think that was one of the elements that really did come out in the study when we brought the men's perspective in, is that they're really much more involved at the macro level, and the women are down at the micro level. So the number one thing they were worried about, the economy and what's going to happen there. We're worried about making sure the family's taken care of.
I thought it was really super interesting that debt was the number 2 concern.
Number 2 for women.
And it didn't even register for men.
Right.
So when you think about women also, again, we know from the data from this survey and the previous one that women are the financial decision makers helping to run the financial household.
64% of women that are working with an advisor they're either married or they're in a relationship. But what happens is when that marriage or relationship terminates, more than a quarter of them leave their advisor like that. And it really suggests that those relationships are very superficial And that's where the real opportunity is for us in the industry, not only for in companies and financial services companies to make sure that women understand that we know their needs, but also for our advisors to really be able to speak to women and build that relationship with the women when they educate that couple.
Women have to see themselves succeeding, they have to see themselves investing, and if they can begin to see those images and hear their own voices, that is the real opportunity.
Women need to be educated so they build that confidence that they're taking the right steps to have a secure retirement.